In the deep, frozen silence of the Ural Mountains, a search party stumbled upon a scene that would haunt them forever. A tent, half collapsed under snow, was slashed open from the inside. Inside, personal belongings, skis, and a camera were left behind. But the hikers were gone. They were found scattered across the slope, some barefoot, others in undergarments, despite the brutal cold of -30 degrees Celsius. Their bodies bore strange injuries: a missing tongue, fractured skulls, and internal damage without external wounds. There were no signs of a struggle, no animal tracks, and no explanation. 9 experienced hikers had died under circumstances that defied logic. This is the Dyatlov Pass incident, a mystery that has remained unsolved for over 60 years, spawning theories ranging from avalanche to alien encounter. But what really happened on that deadly night in February 1959? The 9 hikers were part of a ski trek organized by the Ural Polytechnic Institute, a group of young, experienced adventurers eager to push their limits. Led by Igor Dyatlov, a 23-year-old engineering student with a passion for the wilderness, the team included 8 men and 2 women, though one woman, Zinaida Kolmogorova, was Dyatlov's close friend. They were part of the Soviet Union's post-war generation, brimming with optimism and a spirit of exploration. Their goal was to traverse the northern Urals, a remote and unforgiving region, and reach the summit of Mount Otorten, a peak revered by the local Mansi people as sacred and dangerous. The hike was classified as Category 3, the highest difficulty, requiring meticulous planning and physical endurance. They carried diaries, cameras, and scientific instruments, documenting their journey with the earnestness of young Soviets eager to conquer nature. Little did they know, nature had other plans. On January 23, 1959, the group departed from the city of Ivdel, the last outpost of civilization. They traveled by train, then truck, and finally on foot into the deepening wilderness. The weather was harsh but manageable. Temperatures hovered around -15 degrees Celsius, and the skies were clear. The team was in high spirits, singing songs and joking as they trudged through the snow. They carried heavy packs, tents, sleeping bags, food, fuel, and skis. They documented their journey with a camera, capturing the stark beauty of the frozen landscape. By January 27th, they reached the edge of the forest where the trees gave way to open tundra. They made camp, enjoying a meal of dried meat and porridge. Dyatlov noted in his diary that the group was in excellent condition, and they expected to reach Mount Otorten in about 10 days. It was a time of hope and camaraderie, the last moments of normalcy before the nightmare began. But as they pushed deeper into the Urals, subtle warnings began to emerge. The Mansi people, indigenous to the region, had long considered the area around Mount Otorten to be cursed. They warned outsiders that the mountain was a place where spirits dwelled, and that those who ventured too close risked angering them. Dyatlov, a rationalist, dismissed these tales as superstition. Yet the weather turned unpredictable. On January 31st, a fierce storm forced the group to hunker down for a day. They lost time, and Dyatlov made a fateful decision to deviate from their planned route and cross a pass named Kholat Syakhl, which in Mansi means dead mountain. The name was ominous, but they pressed on. Snow blindness affected some members, and the cold began to bite harder. Still, they maintained their resolve. In his diary, one hiker wrote, "We are all tired, but the mountain calls us. We will not turn back." By February 1st, the group had reached the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. The terrain was treacherous, steep, icy, and exposed to the wind. They decided to set up camp on the mountain's side, a decision that would later be questioned. The tent was pitched on a slope, secured with ski poles and ropes. Inside, they prepared for the night, melting snow for water and eating a meal of bread and lard. The temperature plummeted to -25 degrees Celsius, but they were warm in their sleeping bags. Outside, the wind howled, but inside there was laughter. They sang songs and discussed their plans for the next day. They were less than 10 kilometers from their goal, Mount Otorten. The mood was optimistic, but as the hours passed, something went terribly wrong. Around midnight, something caused them to flee their tent in panic, leaving behind their shoes, coats, and even their skis. What could have driven 9 experienced hikers into the frozen night? The decision to camp on the slope of Kholat Syakhl was the crisis point. In retrospect, it was a fatal error. The slope was exposed to avalanches, and the ground was hard-packed snow, making it difficult to secure the tent properly. But the immediate cause of their flight remains a mystery. Some theories suggest an avalanche, but the tent was not buried, and the hikers' tracks show they left calmly, as if walking, not running. Others propose a katabatic wind, a sudden downdraft of cold air that could have created a terrifying noise and pressure, or perhaps infrasound, low-frequency sound waves that induce panic. Whatever it was, the group abandoned their shelter and descended into the forest, about 1.5 kilometers away. They built a small fire and tried to survive, but the cold was relentless. They were dressed only in underwear or light clothing. Hypothermia set in quickly. One by one, they succumbed to the cold. But some bodies showed injuries that could not be explained by hypothermia alone. The catastrophe unfolded in stages. The first to die were likely the ones who had climbed a nearby tree, perhaps trying to signal for help or escape something on the ground. Their bodies were found with fractures and internal injuries, as if they had fallen from a great height. One hiker, Zolotaryov, had a missing tongue and eyes. Another, Krivonishenko, had a fractured skull and a broken nose. Yet there were no signs of a struggle, no blood on the ground. The injuries were consistent with a high-force impact, like a car crash. But what could have caused such trauma? Some suggest a military test gone wrong, perhaps a missile or a bomb. Others point to a rare meteorological phenomenon known as a snow slab avalanche, which can create a shockwave. But the lack of external bruising on some bodies suggests the pressure came from within. The scene was one of chaos and suffering, a desperate fight for survival that ended in tragedy. The forest was silent, save for the wind. The peak of horror came with the discovery of the last two bodies, found in a ravine weeks later. They were buried under 4 meters of snow, their bodies showing the most severe injuries. One had a fractured skull, the other had a broken spine. They had been covered in a layer of skin and clothing, as if someone had tried to protect them. The injuries were so severe that they could only have been caused by a tremendous force, like an avalanche or a violent explosion. Yet the snow around them was undisturbed. The scene was a tableau of suffering. One hiker had his head crushed, another had a hole in his chest. The medical examiner noted that the injuries were consistent with a high-energy impact, but could not determine the source. The bodies were found with traces of radiation, adding another layer of mystery. The Soviet government quickly closed the investigation, labeling the deaths as due to a compelling natural force. But what force? The answer has never been found, leaving only questions and a lingering sense of dread. The rescue operation began on February 20th, when the group failed to return to their scheduled meeting point. A search party was dispatched, but it took weeks to locate the tent. The discovery of the bodies sent shockwaves through the Soviet Union. The official investigation was secretive, with files classified for decades. The families of the victims were given little information, and many suspected a cover-up. Theories abounded: a Yeti attack, a UFO encounter, a secret military experiment. In 2019, a new study suggested that a rare type of avalanche, a slab avalanche, could explain the injuries and the scene. But the theory has its critics, and the mystery endures. The 9 hikers were buried in a mass grave in Yekaterinburg, their graves marked by a simple monument. The Dyatlov Pass has become a pilgrimage site for those who seek to understand the inexplicable. But the truth, if it exists, remains buried in the snow. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. It has inspired books, films, and countless theories, from the plausible to the fantastical. But beyond the speculation, it is a story of 9 young people who ventured into the wilderness with hope and courage and met a tragic end. Their deaths have become a cautionary tale about the power of nature and the limits of human understanding. The incident has also sparked a broader conversation about the dangers of dogma and the need for transparency in investigations. For historians, it offers a glimpse into the Soviet era, a time of secrecy and suspicion. For the families of the victims, it is a wound that has never healed. As we continue to search for answers, we are reminded that some mysteries may never be solved. If you enjoyed this documentary, please subscribe and share your theories in the comments. The truth may be out there, buried in the ice.